my therapist started dating my mom. Neither told me. I found out when he walked into our living room in boxers. I ghosted both. Now they're begging me to attend their wedding. I said I'd come if I could give a speech. I'm Nate, 28, male, and I used to believe in boundaries. Personal, ethical, therapeutic. I believed they meant something, especially when it came to my therapist, Dr. Jordan Klein, 45, male. When I first started seeing him, I was 23, still picking gravel out of my knees from a wreck of a childhood and trying to scrape together what people called a functional adulthood. My dad left when I was 10, and my mom, Leah, 50, just never quite recovered. Emotionally codependent, passive-aggressive, sometimes overbearing in that "I'm your best friend and your prison warden" kind of way. I spent most of high school pretending I wasn't drowning. Jordan was the first adult who ever just listened without flinching. Balding, soft-voiced, clinical in the way you want your therapist to be. He never told me what to do, just asked questions that gutted me clean. I told him everything, stuff I hadn't said out loud before, stuff I didn't even think I could think without choking. I cried in that damn office more times than I can count. So yeah, he was important. More than a doctor. He helped me build the scaffolding of who I am now, or who I was before this happened. My mom met him exactly once. She was picking me up from an appointment when my car was in the shop, and Jordan happened to be running late, so she walked in with her usual over-friendly, fake humble charm. I remember the weird tension in the air even then, like something cracked and slipped out of alignment for a second, and nobody noticed. Jordan shook her hand. She laughed too hard at one of his jokes. It was weird, but I told myself I was imagining it. They didn't cross paths again, or so I thought. Flash forward 5 years. I had stopped therapy with Jordan after finally leveling out. Moved across town. We hadn't spoken in over a year. My relationship with my mom had stayed complicated. I kept my distance, but still visited for holidays. She'd softened a little, or maybe I'd just gotten better at ignoring the edge in her compliments. Then one random Saturday, I come over to pick up some old tax stuff from her place. I used to have a key, but she changed the locks and never told me. That should have been a clue. She said it was because of a plumbing issue, which made zero sense. I rang the doorbell. No answer. Tried calling. Nothing. But the door creaked open, unlocked. I stepped inside saying, "Mom?" out loud like an idiot. And then he walked into the living room, Dr. Jordan Klein, wearing nothing but boxers, holding a coffee mug that said, #OneStepdad, in cheap vinyl print. I stood there, frozen, like my brain short-circuited, because my therapist, the man who knew the darkest parts of me, was now sleeping with my mother. He looked just as shocked, then guilty, then tried to smile like this was okay. "Hey, Nate, this probably isn't the way you should have found out." I left, didn't say a word, didn't scream, didn't cry, just walked out. Then I ghosted both of them, cold turkey. It's been 6 months. Last week, they sent me a wedding invite. They're getting married. They begged me to come. I said yes, but only if I get to give a speech, and I'm going to. I didn't tell them why I agreed, didn't say, "I forgive you," or even, "Congrats," just a plain dead-eyed, "Sure, I'll be there. I want to give a speech." They were ecstatic, like genuinely thrilled. My mom texted me that night, heart emojis and all. "I knew you'd come around, Redheart. It means the world to me." Jordan sent a separate message that read like a work email. "I appreciate you being open to healing. This is a meaningful step for all of us." I didn't respond. What I did do was pour a drink, sit down at my desk, and start writing. Not a speech. Not yet. What I wrote first was everything I wanted to say. Every buried scream I'd swallowed when I realized my own trauma had become their love story. Every shattered boundary, every ethical line he crossed, every disgusting moment that started to replay in my head with new context. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. How long had it been going on? Did they reconnect after I left therapy? Or God, was it happening while I was still pouring my guts out to him every week? While I was crying about abandonment, about how my mom smothered me, about never feeling safe? I remember telling Jordan, in one session, that sometimes I felt like my mom flirted with people just to compete with me, that she'd latch onto my teachers, my friends' dads, any man who gave me attention. I said, "It's like she wants to be chosen instead of me." He didn't even blink. He said, "That's a powerful observation. How does that affect how you form attachments?" And now, he's the one marrying her. She got chosen. Again, the power dynamic is almost too poetic. The man who helped me name my trauma became a character in it, like a therapist-shaped wolf in a cardigan. That week, I started hearing from the rest of the family. My aunt called me crying, saying how proud she was that I was being the bigger person. My cousin asked if I'd be bringing a date. My mom had already told everyone I was coming, already painted this picture of a healed son ready to bless their union with a heartfelt toast. "He's finally moved on," she told them. What a narrative. What a goddamn story arc. I started writing again, and this time, it was a speech, not the version they expected, not the "I'm so happy for you both" garbage. No, I wrote the kind of speech you give when you're done pretending, when you've stopped making yourself smaller to protect everyone else's comfort, when you're ready to burn the narrative to the ground. Every line, every beat, chosen to look innocent to the casual guest but hit like a freight train to the bride and groom. The stories I planned to tell? All true, but layered, with just enough venom tucked beneath the smile. I even picked out a photo of me and Jordan from our therapy days, one where I'm clearly crying, and he's holding a clipboard. I plan to frame it and give it to them as a wedding gift. The caption? "Thanks for the memories." The hardest part was pretending like I was okay. That Sunday, I met my mom for coffee. She'd been begging for just a little time to talk, no pressure, and I needed to make sure she still believed the act. We met at this little place downtown she used to drag me to when I was in high school, the kind with chalkboard menus and overpriced lavender muffins. She looked good, radiant even. New hair, soft curls, bright lipstick. She looked like a woman getting everything she ever wanted. "Nate," she said, standing to hug me like we hadn't been emotionally estranged for half a year. "You look so grown up." Grown up? Sure. Nothing says maturity like watching your ex-therapist walk into your childhood home in his underwear. I sat across from her and stirred my coffee too much. "I'm just glad you're coming," she said, tearing up slightly. "I know this is unconventional, but when you know, right?" I wanted to ask, when exactly did you know? Before or after my last panic attack on his couch? But I kept my face still, nodded like I'd seen the light, played the part. She launched into details about the wedding, how she wanted it to be. Small but meaningful. Only about 30 people. Backyard ceremony. Jordan's daughter from a previous relationship would be the flower girl. The officiant was a mutual friend from a therapy retreat, of course. "I just think this union is symbolic," she said. "It's about healing, about finding joy where there used to be pain." Symbolic. That was the word that made me want to scream. Because to her, this wasn't betrayal. It was a redemption arc. She had taken my pain, poured it into a wine glass, and toasted with it. I asked, "Did you ever think about how this would make me feel?" Her smile faltered. For a second. "I did," she said, eyes flicking to her cappuccino. "But I also thought, maybe it was meant to be. Maybe Jordan came into your life so he could eventually be part of ours." Like I was a bridge, not a person, just the unfortunate vessel that connected her to her soulmate. That night, I printed the first draft of my speech. It was sharp, brutal, honest in the kind of way that ruins weddings. But something in me pulled back, not because they didn't deserve it, they did, but because I wanted it to hurt right, not just embarrass them. I wanted it to leave a mark that would haunt them. So I reworked the speech, slower, sweeter, deadlier. I wrote a version that sounded like a love letter, a beautiful, touching speech about growth and change and radical honesty. But tucked inside it were landmines, references to therapy sessions he shouldn't have shared, quotes only he and I would recognize, tiny moments dressed as jokes that would make him squirm. I remember once, Jordan told me, "Some boundaries are made to be respected, even when no one's watching." Funny how that stuck with me. I practiced it in the mirror until I could say it with a smile. The day of the wedding was beautiful, sickeningly so. Golden hour sunlight spilling across the backyard like it was hand-picked for Instagram. Fairy lights strung over white folding chairs. A harpist softly plucking, "Here comes the sun," like we were in a Nancy Meyers movie about generational betrayal. And me, standing in a borrowed suit I hadn't worn since my last job interview, with a speech tucked in my inside jacket pocket and a war in my chest. Nobody knew, of course. To them, I was the prodigal son returning with grace and maturity. I smiled at the aunts who used to pinch my cheeks, hugged cousins who hadn't messaged me in years, and shook hands with Jordan's therapist friends who wore smug neutrality like a badge of honor. My mom looked like a queen, flowing ivory dress, hair pinned in soft curls. She cried walking down the aisle to him, and Jordan, he smiled like a man who'd gotten away with something. When they said their vows, I felt nothing, just this numb thrum beneath my ribs, like a fire had already burned through everything, and now I was just standing in the ash. The reception was in full swing by the time they asked me to give my speech. A little buzz from champagne, laughter echoing. My mom was holding Jordan's arm, beaming like this was the moment she'd been waiting for her whole life. I walked up to the mic, cleared my throat, and then I began. Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, well, most of you probably know me better as Leah's son, or, in a previous life, Jordan's patient. There were polite chuckles, nervous ones. I smiled. I've been thinking a lot about the idea of love stories lately, how we tell them, who gets to be the hero, who gets to be collateral damage. And I realized, every great love story has a little darkness in it, a little theft, a little breaking and entering. A pause. But don't worry, this isn't one of those speeches. The crowd relaxed. My mom laughed, hand over her chest. Jordan gave a tight little nod, like he'd dodged a bullet. I let it sit a moment longer. Then, I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be here today, to witness this union, because it's rare to see a man marry the consequences of his own ethical collapse. The room went dead silent. Jordan blinked. My mom's smile froze. I mean, not every therapist gets to sleep with their patient's mother. That's a plot twist you don't see coming. But hey, healing takes many forms, right? Someone dropped a glass. I could feel the silence splintering. And Mom, wow, you always said you'd do anything to support my emotional growth. I just didn't realize that included dating my mental health provider. I folded the paper slowly, put it back in my pocket. No hard feelings, really. I've grown a lot from this. I've learned what betrayal feels like from both sides. And I've learned that sometimes the best way to heal is to watch the people who hurt you tie their own noose with ribbon and call it a wedding vow. I raised my glass to the happy couple. May your love be as ethical as your beginnings. I left before anyone could stop me. Outside, I could hear the music stop. Then the screaming started. Update 1. Update time. First off, I did not expect that kind of reaction when I posted. I figured a few strangers might validate my petty little speech and I'd move on with my life. But the DMs, the comments, the Reddit court of public opinion going full courtroom drama? Wild. Some of y'all called me a legend. Some said I didn't go far enough. A few thought I was a psychopath with mommy issues. Which, hey, fair. But the consensus? That I was justified. Here's what's happened since. The wedding did not finish. I left right after the toast. Didn't even grab a slice of cake. Just walked straight to my car like I hadn't just detonated a nuke in front of 30 guests and a child holding a basket of flower petals. I turned my phone off for 24 hours. That was smart, because when I turned it back on, I had 37 missed calls, dozens of texts, and 2 voicemails from Jordan that sounded like he was about to cry or commit a felony. My mom? Silence. For now. But here's where it gets rich. Apparently, after I left, Jordan tried to salvage things. He literally got back up in front of everyone and tried to give his own impromptu speech about love overcoming awkward beginnings. But the damage was done. Half the guests left. Some walked out during his babble. His daughter, the flower girl, cried and had to be taken home. One of his colleagues apparently asked, "Did you really date your patient's mom?" Right to his face. He got defensive, real defensive, started raising his voice. His sister told him he was embarrassing the family. My aunt told me my mom locked herself in the bathroom for 45 minutes. Also, the efficient, remember, their mutual therapy retreat friend, told my cousin later that he had no idea Jordan had been my therapist. Said he never would have agreed to perform the wedding if he'd known. Said it felt predatory in hindsight. No kidding. So yeah, ceremony, nuked, reception, imploded, marriage, still technically legal, but on very, very shaky legs. Now here's the kicker. Yesterday my mom showed up at my apartment. No warning. Just knocked like we were still on normal terms. I opened the door just enough to see her standing there in sunglasses and holding a Tupperware of cookies, like she was auditioning for an apology commercial. "Nate," she said, voice trembling, "you humiliated us." I stared at her. Just stared. Then I said, "Good. and shut the door. She stood there a while. I watched her from the peephole. Then she left the cookies and walked away. I haven't touched them. I don't know what's coming next. I don't think Jordan's done. I don't think they know what to do now that I pulled the mask off in front of their entire curated audience. But here's the truth. I didn't give that speech to ruin them. I gave it so they couldn't rewrite the story. Because for once, I get to be the one holding the pen. It started 2 days after the speech. I came home from work, late, exhausted, and found my apartment door unlocked, just slightly ajar, enough to set every instinct in my body on high alert. My stomach dropped. I stood there with my hand on the knob, listening. No sounds inside, no movement. Nothing looked out of place when I pushed it open. My laptop was still on the desk. TV, untouched. But my bookshelf? Half my therapy journals were missing. That sounds small, I know. But those notebooks were sacred. I'd filled them during my worst years. Panic attacks, breakdowns, the things I was too afraid to say out loud, even in therapy. I never left them in plain sight, but I hadn't hidden them either. I mean, who the hell would take something like that? Unless they knew exactly what they were looking for. I didn't have to guess long. An hour later, I got an email from a burner address. No name, no subject line, just a PDF attachment titled, Reflections, PDF. I opened it. It was scanned pages of my own journal, with comments written in the margins. Jordan's handwriting, in red pen. He had annotated my trauma. Stuff like, still stuck in victim narrative, projection, pathologizing mother as a coping mechanism. Like he was grading a student. I felt nauseous, violated. I didn't even finish scrolling through it. Just slammed my laptop shut and sat on the floor, heart racing, like I'd been caught naked in public. He wasn't just retaliating. He was trying to reassert control, trying to remind me, I know you. I know what breaks you. I can twist your insides if I want. I called the cops, filed a report. They said without video evidence or clear proof of forced entry, it would be hard to pursue. The journals? Could be misplaced. The email? Gray area. Not a direct threat. I knew better. Jordan wasn't trying to scare me physically. He was trying to destabilize me, make me doubt myself, gaslight me without ever saying a word. So I did the only thing I knew would hurt him back. I went public. I found the ethics board listing for his license. I wrote a detailed complaint. I included the dates, the conflict of interest, the fact that he'd started a relationship with my mother within a year of terminating therapy, potentially earlier. I attached screenshots, emails, scans of his handwriting on my journal entries, everything. Then I hit submit, and then I waited. And while I waited, I plotted, because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about exposure. And what I was about to do next. It would make the wedding speech look like a warm-up act. I didn't just want to burn the bridge. I wanted to rebuild it in gasoline, and then light the match in front of him. The state licensing board was already reviewing the materials, but anyone who's ever filed one of those complaints knows it's a slow, bureaucratic grind. Months, maybe a year. And in the meantime, Jordan would still be working, still seeing clients, still weaponizing psychology like a scalpel. I needed a pressure point, so I made one. Remember how Jordan always emphasized narrative control, that therapy was about rewriting your story? Well, I took a page out of his playbook. Literally, I launched a blog, anonymous for now, just titled, Patient X, the Therapist and the Mother. It started slow, just a single post recounting what happened, changing names and locations, but not the details, the betrayal, the boundaries crossed, the fact that he started sleeping with the mother of a former patient and tried to erase the power dynamic by calling it love. But I didn't stop there. I uploaded snippets from my annotated journal, blurred my handwriting, but left his notes untouched. Let readers see the red ink, the dismissive tone, the way he turned trauma into a post-mortem exam. And it blew up. Within 48 hours, the blog had 12,000 views. Within a week, 50K. Then 100K. It got picked up on Twitter. Therapists started commenting, unethical, predatory. This is why trust in the mental health system breaks down. I even got a message from one of his former clients. She didn't know about my story, but said Jordan made her uncomfortable, too, that he pushed boundaries. Told her once she reminded him of someone important in his life. I asked who. She said, his fiance's son. He was already talking about me while dating my mom. That's when I knew He'd been planning this long before I ever walked in on him in boxers. Maybe even before I ended therapy. He didn't just break boundaries. He studied them, slowly nudged them outward like a magician, until nobody noticed how far they'd moved. And I was done letting him be subtle. So I posted another entry, this one titled, #OneStepdad, a cautionary tale. And in it, I dropped his full name. I knew what I was doing. I knew the legal risk. I didn't care, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was defense. Of others. Of me. And it worked. 3 days later, the blog inbox exploded. Journalists, activists, therapists. But the real gem? An email from his former employer. Apparently Jordan had applied for a new position at a private clinic in another state. A cushy 6-figure job. They had found the blog. They rescinded the offer. I didn't have to scream. I just told the story, and watched as his own tools, his words, his red ink, his narrative control, became the rope that hung him. Second update. And yeah, this one hits different, because it turns out, when you pull the right thread, the whole damn costume unravels. So, remember how my mom basically vanished after the speech? A few awkward attempts at reaching out, cookies on the porch, some vague text about healing the family. Well, she wasn't done. Not even close. A week after the blog went viral, I got a call from an unknown number. I never picked those up, but this time, I did. Her voice was shaking. "Nate," she said, "what did you do?" I didn't answer. I just waited. She went on, panicked, furious, crying but not really crying, more like performing crying. Said Jordan lost his job. Said they couldn't go on their honeymoon because people were harassing them online. Said they were getting threats, which I 100% don't condone, by the way. But then she dropped the real reason she was calling. "You need to take it down," she said, voice low and tight. "The blog, the posts, all of it. You're ruining our lives." I actually laughed. Laughed so hard I almost dropped the phone. "Our lives?" I said. "Mom, you chose this." Her response? I swear to God, she said this like it made everything better. "I didn't think it would matter. You weren't even his patient anymore. Like that erases 5 years of emotional intimacy, power imbalance, trauma excavation. Like the second he handed me a termination letter, he was free to climb into my family like it was a goddamn Airbnb. I told her it wasn't coming down. I told her I hoped she realized that by choosing Jordan, she didn't just choose love. She chose to become the villain in her own son's story. She hung up on me. But here's the kicker. 2 days later, I got a DM from someone I didn't recognize. It was Jordan's ex-wife. Yeah, that's right. Turns out, this wasn't the first time he crossed the line. Not by a long shot. She told me he had a history of inappropriate relationships, that he got too close to patients' families, especially when the patient was male, that there were whispers back when he worked in New York. Nothing stuck, but enough for her to leave. And now she's talking to the ethics board too. That might have been the first moment in this whole saga where I felt real closure. Not because he's finally facing consequences, but because it wasn't just me. I wasn't the crazy, overreacting son. I was the pattern finally speaking up. As for my mom, she and Jordan are still technically married. But last I heard, from my cousin, who saw her at the grocery store, she was alone. No ring, no smile. Just a woman staring at a bruised banana display like her whole life had gone soggy. I haven't spoken to her since the call. I don't know if I ever will. But here's what I do know. I was born into a story where I didn't get to hold the pen. Now, I'm the author. So here we are. 7 months after the speech. 5 since the blog. 3 since the ethics board opened their formal investigation. And today, I got the email. Jordan Klein, former therapist, stepfather for hire, red ink-loving narcissist, is officially under suspension pending full review. Not a revocation yet, but his license is inactive. Clients notified. Practice shut down. His name? On blast. His reputation? Ashes. And here's what makes it sickly perfect. The ethics board cited multiple breaches of professional conduct, including inappropriate post-therapeutic relationships and failure to maintain clear boundaries with a patient's immediate family. Post-therapeutic, because that 1-year gap he tried to hide behind? Turns out the board doesn't give a damn about technicalities when the whole thing stinks of manipulation. They saw right through it. You know who else did? A woman named Angela. She's 24, lives 3 states over. She messaged me last week after finding the blog. Said she was 19 when she saw Jordan, that he made her feel seen, that she felt like she could tell him anything. Said she ended therapy because he started texting her after hours. At first, it was support. Then it was checking in. Then it turned flirty. She blocked him. Didn't tell anyone. Until now. She sent a signed affidavit to the board. Jordan is no longer just the guy who married his patient's mom. He's a pattern, and it's catching up to him. As for my mom, she tried to spin it. Of course she did. I heard through my aunt that she's telling people Jordan manipulated her too, that she didn't know it was unethical, and thought they had something special. She's not entirely wrong. He did manipulate her, but she also had a choice. And when I needed a mom, she chose him. And here's the final twist, the part that makes people blink and say, "Wait, what?" Last week, I gave another speech, not at a wedding this time, at a local mental health conference, titled, "When Boundaries Break, A Survivor's Perspective on Therapist Misconduct." They invited me after the blog gained traction. Small panel, maybe 80 people, therapists, students, a few survivors. I stood there with my notes, same jacket, same calm voice, but this time, I didn't speak in code. I told the truth, all of it. The room went still when I described the living room moment. Laughter when I talked about the #OneStepdad mug. Gasps when I read Jordan's red ink notes aloud. And applause, actual applause, when I ended with this. They say healing isn't linear, and it's not. But sometimes healing looks like holding the match while the mass burns. Afterward, 2 therapists approached me. One hugged me. One asked if I'd consult on their training program for ethical practice. Both thanked me. That was the moment. Not the speech, not the blog, not the suspension. That was it. That's when I knew I wasn't broken. I wasn't ruined. I was proof that even when someone tries to rewrite your story, you can write it back. Better, darker, real. And this time, you own the ending. Okay, last one. Epilogue. The mic drop. So about 2 weeks after the suspension hit, I got a letter. Real paper. Stamped envelope. My name in cursive on the front like it was 1997, and someone was sending prom invitations. It was from my mother. No text, no email, no DMs this time. Just this old school, emotionally loaded envelope sitting in my mailbox like a landmine. I opened it slowly, half expecting Bible verses, half expecting guilt bombs. But what I got was a single-page letter in my mom's handwriting. And I'll read you the first line verbatim. "I hope someday you understand that love doesn't always look right at first, but it doesn't make it wrong." I laughed out loud, right there in my apartment kitchen, holding this sad little script of delusion wrapped in perfume and denial. She went on to say that she and Jordan were taking space, that she felt lost, and that she hoped we could talk when things calmed down. Said she missed me, said she didn't want the family to be permanently divided. Then, at the bottom, she added, "If you do respond, please don't post it online. I think we both shared enough." We both shared enough, like we were equal players in this tragedy, like we both aired dirty laundry instead of her airing my therapist inside her bed. I didn't write her back, but I did do one last thing. I took the letter, I folded it neatly, and I slid it into a frame, right next to the photo I mentioned in part 3, the one of me and Jordan during therapy. Me crying, him, clipboard in hand, unbothered, caption still the same. "Thanks for the memories." That frame sits on my bookshelf now, not as a shrine, not as a grudge, but as a reminder of what I survived, of who I became in the wreckage, of the story I took back. And if Jordan or my mom ever walk into my life again, I won't need a speech. I'll just point to the shelf and let the past speak for itself.